Welcome back to EESC 4188. This is Lecture 5C, Eliminating Jargon and Cliches. This is going to be a very quick lecture. It's actually only one slide because essentially the message is very simple. Try and avoid both of these types of words in your writing. So let's talk about each one. Starting with jargon. Jargon is a vocabulary of a specialized field, especially when it is unnecessarily obscure to the uninitiated. So every branch of science, in fact, every branch of study of any type has its own set of jargon. We have geological terms. If you are a geologist, all of your minerals, those are all jargon. If you're a chemist and you say something like HPLC, or you're just rattling off types of analytical instruments, those are jargon. If you're speaking to people within your own field, that's fine. They understand exactly what you're saying. But very little of the writing we do as environmental scientists is writing to just a specific part of our own field. So we need to be very careful about audience. Audience is going to be a central topic of Lecture 6. So just kind of hold this thought. For now, basically just remember that if you are writing only to people specialized within your field, you can use jargon and specialized language. And if anybody else needs to read your writing, you need to be more clear in your language. So there's two ways jargon can be put into a piece of writing. It can be intentionally put in there, and sometimes people use jargon intentionally to make their document look more sophisticated or more complex. I would avoid this if possible. The second is just sort of lazily inserted. In other words, a person is just writing, it comes to their mind, they're not really thinking of their audience. They're being a little bit lazy when analyzing who they're writing to and what they need to actually communicate. So we'll talk more about audience next week. I'll just throw a couple of examples out there. So you might see this in some sort of a writing. We risk making a type 1 error. Now, unless you're a statistician, you probably don't remember the difference between a type 1 error and a type 2 error. Very few people will actually be able to read this and know exactly what you're talking about. The analysis needs to be more granular. Well, that's kind of jargon that you might hear when people are discussing the findings of a report. What exactly does that mean? Well, you could just say more detailed. The next sentence actually comes from a journal article. I took this out of the abstract. This is actually the first sentence. Negative ion electrospray Orbitrap MS is well suited for the characterization of NAs and NAFCs in Athabasca OSBW. Unless you are really nerdy on this topic, you're going to have no idea what this means. So be really careful about who you're writing for. In that case, it's in an analytical chemistry journal, and probably most people who will read it know exactly what Athabasca oil sands process water is, so maybe no big deal. But you need to be really careful when you're making these types of sentences in order to make your writing readable to other people. So when to use? Only when your sole audience is highly specialized. The next category is cliches. A cliche is a trite or hackneyed expression or idea. That's the dictionary definition. My definition is a metaphor that was clever once but is now overused and annoying. So we have a lot of metaphors. I'm dog tired, burning the candle at both ends. I mean, we have a million cliches that we can use in our everyday language without worrying about it. When I say when to use, never. So never use these in technical writing. If you use these in your everyday language, that's fine. We all use them without thinking about them. But in our technical writing, we actually need to think about what we're saying very carefully. And if we're using cliches, we need to use a more precise term. So for example, we're on the bleeding edge of innovation. This was once a clever saying. Now it's kind of hackneyed. He threw me under the bus. I would hope to never see something like that in a technical document. The holy grail of this study would solve our problems, but there's no silver bullet to be found. Again, once clever, these terms are now highly overused. So when to use them? Pretty much never in technical writing. In your own everyday language, no problem. Okay, so that was just a quick lecture on jargon and cliches. The bottom line is try and avoid these to the extent possible. Okay, we'll see you in Lecture 5D.